Welcome back to Hannity. So France is on high alert at this hour following today's deadly terrorist attack that left 12 people dead. Investigators working round the clock to put the pieces together. So could a similar terrorist attack happen here at home? Joining me now, terrorism expert Steve Emerson. Steve, I want to talk about the growth in population of people moving to France from Muslim countries. You have these no-go zones. You have Sharia courts that they've allowed. I assume that the French, they wanted to be accepting and accommodating and have not insisted on assimilation. Has that played a part in this, and is this something we've got to be on alert for now?
Well, certainly throughout Europe, Sean, you have no-go zones. When I was in Brussels a year ago, when I asked the police to take me to the Islamic zone or the Islamic community area, they refused. They say, we don't go there. This goes on in Belgium. This goes on in Sweden, in the Netherlands, in France. It goes on in Italy. I mean, it goes on throughout Europe. So there are no-go zones. Number two,
hang on a second. I don't want you to rush through this, because no-go zone means no non-Muslims, no police, no fire, their own court system. So basically, these countries have allowed Muslims to take over parts of their country, entire portions and towns.
These are semi-autonomous countries within countries in which the federal governments there have basically given up, surrendered their autonomy, surrendered their authority, and goes against the entire grain of what social democracy was after World War II, was to integrate everybody into a socialist, socialist democracy, which was really a pluralist experiment, which worked. And everybody was supposed to be egalitarian, or at least everyone was supposed to be equal in a pluralist society. What has happened, however, with migration of Muslims, and it's not all Muslims, the problem is the domination of Muslims within European countries, particularly in France, has been by radical Islamic groups, the mosques, the Islamic centers, and they infuse the Islamic population with a militant strain of Islam that teaches them the infidel has to be killed, and that the crusaders like the French and Jews and Americans have to be killed or punished like today. And this goes on and on and on. And the reaction, unfortunately, as we saw this morning from the president or from the prime minister of France or from Cameron of Britain, is this has nothing to do with Islam. This is just a simple act of violence, and that Islam is a religion of peace. And when they say those things, they exonerate the leaders of Islamic communities throughout Europe, and the militants themselves are given a free pass.
All right, so
when you point out
the next logical question then, Steve, is, okay, what about visas from people coming from Muslim countries? What about people that come to America that are Muslim? I'm sure the average American believes in freedom of religion. They don't want to discriminate. They don't want to be called Islamophobic. All of these things. How do you balance the two? If people are coming from Muslim countries, how do you determine if they hold radical views, if they want Sharia implemented in America, like this guy Chowdhury that I talked about?
Well, you raise a very good question, because that's the role. You know, there are DHS officers placed overseas in U.S. embassies in certain countries that have produced disproportionate numbers of terrorists, like in Egypt or in Saudi Arabia or elsewhere. Their role is to collect the intelligence on the visa applicants coming to the United States. The problem has been, under this administration, is that this DHS has specifically instructed DHS agents overseas to basically not do their job, to not collect this intelligence. And when the intelligence has been collected, to show that the applicants coming to the United States with the visas in hand have radical backgrounds, either connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, connected to the Taliban, connected even to ISIS, they've been told to look away. I can tell you that personally, having discussions with DHS officials and other agents from DHS who operate in an environment that's Orwellian. And so you're right, there's a real problem here in our national security being violated.
Do you think France can get control of their country again and take over these no-go zones, stop Sharia courts? I know prayer rugs are in just about every hotel if you go to Paris, according to a friend of mine who travels there quite often. Do they have the ability now to stop this, to say, no, you either assimilate or you have to go?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think they've reached critical mass, frankly. And I've said this before. I think Europe is finished.
You think it's finished?
Extrapolate into the
well, there's a poll out that 1 in 6 people
in
in France actually support ISIS. over 1,000 French have gone to join ISIS. So you're saying you don't think they can recover, that there's too many radical Islamists that have taken over this portion of that country, and it would be a war to take it back?
They wouldn't take it back. They refuse to take it back. You know, Sweden just engineered this artificial political coalition designed to stop any type of immigration prohibitions till the year 2022. So we're talking about a situation throughout Europe where there's a refusal to acknowledge the problem. And two, even if they did acknowledge the problem, what are they going to do if 6 to 7 to 8 to 9% are constitute a serious radical threat? Not every single person, but within that percentage of no-go zones, where Sharia courts are, who are they hurting the most? They're hurting Muslim women the most. They're the ones who get subject to beatings, to death, to
women that
crimes.
live in France are subject to Syria. They're not subject to the laws of the country. That's the,
not all Muslim women.
A lot of
not
they
all
live in
Muslim
these.
women, but the women,
if they live in the no-go zones.
Absolutely, you're 100% right.
Yeah, all right, Steve.
You're 100% right. That's the problem.
All right, that's a big problem and a warning, I think.